Welcome to Untamed Blossoms, the podcast where we celebrate the untamed journey of womanhood. Here, we tell the stories of incredible women who have embraced their authenticity, inspiring others to do the same.
From entrepreneurs to artists, activists to adventurers, we share triumphs, challenges, and the beauty of self-discovery. These are the stories of women blazing their own trails, breaking free, and blooming unapologetically.
Join us to connect, be inspired, and celebrate the power of women's stories. Together, let's rewrite the rules and embrace our wildness.
Welcome to Untamed Blossoms. I'm your host, Amanda Riley.
And I'm Christy Riley. Welcome to the show, everybody.
I like that we both went crazy, wild, curly, half-up hair.
Hair day.
It's almost like we planned this.
We did not.
We didn't.
We just want it to be wild. 2026, baby.
Feels
The energy I feel about it.
Yeah, I feel wild in general.
I do.
Yeah,
I feel the same.
yeah.
Like a release has happened of some sort.
Well, the year of the snake is almost over, so should be in our final shedding at the moment.
For all of you who, like us, are purging every aspect of their home currently, organizing, purging, it is real at my house.
For real. I'm still pretty much making bread every chance I get, but I have purged some things to make room for bread-related materials.
Yeah.
So
My
that's
husband
been
doesn't
helpful.
really get a choice. I'm just purging everything.
I like that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey.
Sometimes a forced purge is needed.
Don't need any of this.
You're getting ready to get onto a plane and go to Mexico tomorrow.
In the morning, baby. In the morning. Our annual Mexico trip in January. Thank God.
I'm so jealous.
I know. But you're only a couple weeks behind me.
No, I'm like a whole month this time. We usually go pretty early February because we're usually there during Valentine's Day or right
around there.
Right around there. Because we usually fly home on the day of the Super Bowl. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Because flights are kind of cheap.
Right.
But this year we're pushing it to the end of February, going into the first week of March to hopefully get a little warmer weather.
Yeah.
So
you guys have a lot of sunshine. It's just not super warm.
yeah, I mean, we'll get some 70-degree days, which is obviously awesome. And maybe 180 day. And we're yes, that's a whole beach day, you know?
Right.
We're hoping for it to be high 70s, low 80s the whole time we're there if we wait,
Yeah.
So
for us sun worshipers, this is vital. We live in Ohio in the winter.
Because literally we had spring 3 days ago. And then yesterday was the coldest. Yeah.
Yeah. We vacillate between 60-degree days, raining, and then sub-zero freezing temperatures. Yeah.
It's just crazy. And I know I'm always giving a shit for talking about the weather on this podcast, but it's because it's so unruly and unfair.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to say? Just ignore the fact that we're being tortured?
It directly impacts us in a big way. I don't know that that's true about everyone, and probably not everyone that is even listening to us. It's probably not as effective on them as it is us, but it greatly impacts our mood.
Yeah, it's malarkey.
Yeah. So it's why we talk about it.
Well, we have an energy healer on the show today. I'm going to say, what do you think is going on?
Yes,
Rachel. With my energy,
Rachel is a ball of energy and probably one of the most vulnerable and willing to share humans I've ever come across. And just a beautiful light soul that has an amazing story and has healed herself and now healing others. That's the story of most healers, I feel like. And she and my biofeedback friend, Janine, who's been on the show, she introduced us. And we were immediately at first, trauma dumping with each other. My story and her story kind of mirrored each other a lot when we were young.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just a really cool human. And I can't wait for you guys to hear her story.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Rachel, hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. We did not plan for all of us to have matching hair today, but
here we are.
Here we are.
With all of us having magnificently curly hair.
Yeah. Not even my natural state.
Don't hate, okay? You don't have naturally curly hair like us. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. What do you want from us?
Your hair's looking fabulously large today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did nothing. It decided to show up like this.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How did you two meet? Because you two, this is your connection. So
We met through our biofeedback person, Janine. I'm assuming you do biofeedback with her as well. And that's how you know her.
Mhm.
And she thought we would be fast friends. And
She was
so
right.
She was right.
She was right.
She was right.
Yeah.
And we went to dinner and we met a couple times after that. And yeah, we immediately are like deep diving down all of our trauma.
Sorry for anybody around us that knows someone. Yeah, I thought about that later. I was like, if anybody was not wanting to hear some of those
If
things,
anybody was listening to our conversation, they would have been like, oh God,
they had
we
some
have to move.
therapy. Yes. We triggered someone. Yes.
We might have triggered somebody to go to therapy after those conversations for sure. We were there a while and I was like, "Whoa, that was deep. That was some deep stuff." But, I was impressed by your energy and light immediately. And also your willingness is what I said in the intro, for you to be very vulnerable about your experiences on this planet so far, which I think are very wide and varied. You've experienced a lot of life in your 42 years.
I'll be 41 next
41, 41,
Almost, yeah,
41 years.
Mhm.
So I was really impressed by the things that you have endured, I will say that, and survived, and then turned into something that's thriving.
Yeah.
It's impressive to me. So take us back and give us a little intro to Rachel. And you're from Ohio, born here.
So I'm from Ohio. I was born in Columbus and I grew up in the short north. If you're familiar with Columbus, it was before the short north was trendy like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a harsher childhood in the way that it was when the Kings and the short north posse were still active. So it just wasn't quite as safe, even though we ran around outside. There were a lot of things that happened as a little kid. My brother getting jumped in front of me by kids trying to steal his bike, like just things that would happen that immediately create a lot of anxiety just as a little kid.
Yeah.
And I was a sensitive kid. One of those, the words that exist now for neurodivergence and spectrums, and it didn't exist then. So I was just very overwhelmed pretty constantly. But so one of the things that I was thinking about it's relevant to what we're talking about is that when I went to elementary school, Fifth Avenue does not exist anymore, but it was an elementary school at the time when I was little. And it was very big on teaching kids how to work together. Like we had, a song that we would sing in assembly every week, and it was like, the world is a place of many kinds of colors. We all are created equally, it was this big, we're going to work together kind of thing. Really addressed racism, really addressed classism, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, though, I became, everybody was big on peer mediation. And so we started doing peer mediation in the school. But then I became the peer mediator of the peer mediators.
Ooh.
So like, I know.
Final boss material.
Listen, right,
Yeah.
in fifth grade. Yeah, I had a lot of But the thing about that is what's interesting. And at the time, it just was so natural that if a kid got stuck, I'd get pulled from class and I would be explaining not only to the kids why each kid was upset, I'd be explaining to the kids why the adults were upset. And then I'd be explaining to the adults what they had forgotten about being a kid. So I've always been really good at nuance around this person is seeing this, but this part is being missed or whatever. And then I also became very, very skilled at pattern recognition. And it could be in the ways that were really obnoxious. Like I spend the night at a friend's every Friday. I'm noticing every Saturday morning, her mom has a headache. Her mom is upset with loud noises. And then because I'm a kid, right, my joke is that my nervous system regulated before my mouth. And I would say, I'd be like, do you ever think you drink too much? Because you are very upset every Saturday, your great time at night, and then you're very upset about that thing, and so a lot of adults would always be like, Rachel, you don't need to say everything you think. I was talked to a lot about that. But it was one of these things where I had to start learning what I'd call social politics really early. And the thing is that then as I moved on and we moved from the short north to Clintonville in Columbus, and to me, that was like culture shock. We had a keyhole driveway. I thought it was a parking lot. I was like, what is this? My dad he would always picked up trash in neighborhoods. He was very like green that way. But we move in, we're like playing with the new neighborhood kids. They're like, what's crazy? Ever since you guys got here, this like bum is like new in the neighborhood. That's my dad. My dad was wearing like a ripped up sweatshirt, ripped up jeans. He's just out like doing stuff. But my dad was also a psychologist for 40 years.
Wow.
So my dad was, And my dad was, when you're asking about my family dynamic, it's like my dad was raised in Florida. He was raised by parents who both didn't get high school educations because these are like, uh, Jewish children who they have to just help with the family. It's World War II times, they're doing those things. So my dad wasn't raised with a bunch of money. My mom was raised in Bexley, Irish Catholic. My grandfather was a successful businessman. My parents meet at the state hospital when they're both working in mental health, those kinds of things. So I have these parents with two very different socio-economical backgrounds. And like, so we were raised, we always had enough, but my dad raised us to work really, really hard. I never knew anything about money. He always said, no, that's my money. That's not your money. Like you can figure it out for yourself. So I always had jobs. So that's also an important part of the story is we move into a neighborhood. I make a flyer. I go around. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm Rachel. Can I walk your dog? Can I watch your house? Can I, like hustling like a business boss, right? Can I mediate your marriage?
Yeah. Whatever you need.
Whatever you need.
Whatever you guys need, I'm in. Right. And so the thing is like all of these things together, I entered middle school and I was not prepared. I come from an elementary school where it's all about, equality. We're all meant to get along. And then I enter middle suburb America and I am not prepared for what happens with girls in, middle school and the social bee climbing and like that kind of thing. Where this heads, because probably what you have, what's mentioned about me is where this winds up. So this is the part that's important is I wind up working with families and with people with eating disorders and substance abuse. So of course I'm going to follow a perfect timeline. So 12, 13. So, and before this, it's like nobody ever, I'm a small framed individual, but when I'm like, oh no, I was a comfort eater when I was a little kid and people are like, no, you probably think that. I'm like, no, I was. So in 7th grade, I have the growth spurt before everybody else. I get my first taste of like losing weight, like naturally, know, and it was such a feeling. But then of course, I keep eating how I always ate. Everybody else loses weight. It's, when you go to Express and all your friends are a size 2 and you're the 8 now, it becomes this hierarchy of things. Even though as an adult, you want to say it's not important. As a kid, it was everything. So that in middle school, what started to happen, which later I would figure out, and this is important for what I teach too, that when estrogen, right, floods your system and you become more sensitive to everything around you, enter diagnoses that don't quite fit that experience. No one was talking about that. I don't even know if people still talk about it as much as now. Why it's being talked about is because people in my age group, perimenopause, you get flooded with estrogen. All of a sudden you're being more sensitive to even social interactions. And then everybody's talking about middle school and high school, even though you're in your 40s. Brings up these issues, right?
Yeah.
So here I am in the onset, eating disorders. We just, you can wash it. I have the friend that takes me to the bathroom that's like, here's how to throw up. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That sounds really scary. I just won't eat. And I go back and forth with that. 8th grade was a disaster. I just don't go to school as much as I can because now boys have entered the picture. I grew up with boys. I understand boys. I always would then be mediating like in between, but then that's never great when the boys are like, Rachel understands me better than you. And it's 8th grade. How much is there to understand? But again, I want to like, it's one of those, as an adult where you look back at this and you're like, all of this over Phil Smith, like, like, okay, full cut, like, wow. So it was such a big deal then.
Right.
So when I go to high school, that I could only take it so much. I have an older brother as well. When I'm a freshman, he's a senior. I'm not really like proud of how I handled that. He was more, I was more friends with like the cooler kids. He was more, academically successful, let's say that. And I wanted separation. It wasn't that I wasn't smart, but I didn't want to focus on being smart. I wanted to focus on being thin and pretty. And I was not beautified at that point, and I wasn't very thin until sophomore year. So what happened was, again, so follow the onset or like the typical timeline. My brother goes away to college. My mom feels like she can't breathe. They think it's allergies. The doctor said she had an allergy thing. She tells my dad a few days later, I just don't feel right. Let's go check it out. 8 hours later, my dad's like, hey, don't freak out. They're admitting your mom. She had a coronary embolism like in her heart from blood clot from hormone.
Wow.
Right. So as that was happening, and again, this now goes back to the sensitivities, I was really overwhelmed that I could tell the adults were not being honest with me. And I understand later, they're like, well, we didn't want to scare you. Like there was nothing for you to do with it. But the thing for me, and again, this is kind of this back and forth thing, what I teach and what I do with people as a somatic practitioner is introducing safety to their body, not the feeling of calm, the feeling of safe, of just helping the body oscillate in the nervous system back to restoring safety, because we all find safety in different things, right? With my eating disorder, a number becomes safe. A guy becomes safe. A certain friend becomes safe. For me, the problem is that coherence makes me feel safe. I need to understand something, and truth lands in my body like safety. Right. I had this phase where when people would say, are you allergic to anything when you go to the doctor? I would write lies. Because even my doctor later, I'm somebody who has so many allergies to medicine, it's unreal what my 20s became. But my old practitioner, who was a medical practitioner, we're at a certain point, and she was like, medicine can't help you. I'm sorry. Like, we can't help you. You're going to have to figure out something else, which is what led me on alternative paths.
Yeah.
Because that was really scary to be told, because I didn't know anything.
Right.
I didn't learn all this until I did. And the thing is that with that, though, she asked me years later when I went back to talk to her about stuff. And I said, she asked me a question. She said, how did you always know when I was lying? And I said, because I could feel it. And she said, well, I got to be honest with you. We didn't know. Most of the things that we told you worked for most other people. We didn't know why they didn't work for you.
Right.
And so even if you go back, and it's like, that's the thing where we can kind of fast forward of high school was a mess. Anorexia turned, and I went downhill. When my mom got sick, it just, there was something that took off in me, and I really fell in love with that disorder. And it worked for me. Again, like for anybody, it worked until it didn't. But it also worked until everybody was intervening on me.
Yeah.
But it was a very quick decline for me. And that's the joke is anything I do very well. So I was very successful at anorexia. I was very successful at bulimia. And then it turned into, but then my junior year when I'm purging now, and no one knew that, I'm like oscillating back and forth, but I started drinking. And I love drinking. I'll be 7 years sober this year. Thank you. Right. Which also has been its own back and forth dance. But at the time, there was no dance. I was just in love with what this did for my confidence, right?
Yeah.
So it was great.
Yeah.
So because the other thing is, I have never been comfortable. I wasn't comfortable at the time with the feeling of being desired, right?
Yeah.
Even though you really want it, like it was a lot for me. I was really uncomfortable. To me, I always would say that a problem for me was it was more intimate to hold hands than to actually have sex or something like that. Because honestly, you could dissociate. Like it's very intimate when you're holding somebody's hand.
Yeah.
But the other thing, that was a thing that I was learning, right?
It's interesting. I'm 3 years sober.
Congrats.
Right? Yep. 3 years. Yep. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And one thing I did right after I got sober was go to a sober talks. And it was just a couple people in the community who shared their story about sobriety. And one of the speakers that actually stuck with me that helped me remain sober talked about being neurodivergent and feeling so uncomfortable that she's gorgeous. She's literally a model. But feeling so uncomfortable with attention from others that the alcohol was the only thing that helped her take her mind off of the hyper focus on understanding that she was being sought after.
Well, may I? Because the thing is too, my favorite thing I love teaching, and what you're explaining, whenever those, again, coherence makes me feel safe. So exactly what you're explaining, same, but I wanted to understand why. Like, what is that? What is it about alcohol that it's doing?
Right.
And it becomes a disruptor to the field where I actually can't feel anything coming from somebody else. I only feel my own stuff.
Right.
And so a lot of people who do have, I do have my own energy and excitement and that kind of thing. I do great as long as no one else's interference is coming in. And the energy of jealousy and envy and competition is not comfortable for most people in their bodies.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so that was, again, I didn't know that yet. I'm just avoiding it. And then, and of course, my senior year, I fall in love and so in love. I loved boys. Like that was the other thing too. It's like I have been addicted to a lot of things, but I will die on the hill. Me and one of my kids say we will thrive on the hill. That boys have been the hardest thing for me until perimenopause, when my body just was like, and we're done. And I'm like,
Steam.
so excited when they showed up. Nothing. Right. I ended up teaching. One of the places this goes to is I ran programming in a rehab in Southern Ohio for years, and I would teach men and women's groups. But one of my favorite things to teach was about that hormonal piece of that with women. You know, we're so excited until we're not, and then what's that experience on the other side? Because I would meditate on that. I'm like, what is it like to be where like you just show up and people are like, ah!
Yeah.
Really exciting. And I would always fall, but that was the thing. Like when I was drinking, I would always be about the guy that everybody's like, ah! I'm like, I want that one. I want that one to do that about me. That's like, you know, double hit. But the problem is, and I'm sure this did not help my case of looking kind of just manic and bipolar, is that I'd be super into it when I drank. But then when I'm sober, I'm so insecure, right? So this person's really into me. I'm really into it. Then when I'm sober, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Everybody's giving me a hard time. And they're like, wait,
what happened? Like last night, we were not this way. Yeah.
Well, last night you were not this way. Like, hey, darling, you were confident last night. What's this? And it's like, I know I'm so insecure. I'm so insecure. But then later that night, now I'm confident again because I'm drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we can also see that there's identity crisis entering, right, the chat when I'm in my 20s. So the falling in love with the boyfriend, that part is a circle back for later. And I don't know how relevant it is for this conversation, but it did not go well. Like it started really great. And I always want to be really careful with this because the thing is about it is this was a friend. We were very in love for teenagers for what it was. And there was a lot going on that I did not know. And as a kid, there was no way he knew how to process it. I ended up being a recipient of dynamics that would not actually come to light and come forward for 10 years, but it became abusive. It became really, I didn't know why he was so predatorial with me, why when we broke up, this was then it taught me to be a secret. I'm being stalked. I'm being watched. I'm being kept. And I didn't know why. Years later, you know, that came out. But the problem is in between all the years of all of this, I'm trying to digest all of this while trying to deal with my eating disorder, while trying to deal with my substance abuse. Well, now drugs have entered the chat. I'm having heart failure. I'm in rehab. My family's in disarray. Like it's a mess. And the thing is with that mess, as anybody knows, even when all these things are happening, everybody keeps just kind of pushing you along, being like, yeah, but let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And it's hard to keep going when shame and guilt are drowning you and there's no one who's safe to tell, especially when you're in the system where you have 47 minutes and then they cut you off and then I'll see you next week. And even if you're like sending emails, then all that happens is you send too many emails to your therapist and then they send them to the psychiatrist to say, look, they're really escalated. And you're like, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Who do I talk to?
Right.
Oh, talk to your support group. I'm like, you want me to talk to girls just like me where we're all just freaking out and none of us have any skills.
And what was the first thing that you were like, what was the first thing you went into treatment for, I guess? Like, was there like,
so I just what happened. Okay. Yes. I didn't have a choice. So back in the day, right? So I'm 41 next month, but I was 19 the first time I went to treatment. I'd been in therapy since I was 15. I was raised by a therapist, so I was always in therapy, but I was in a rehab. But what happened is I only funny now. I ended up in the hospital because my heart I was having a heart attack because I had purged myself into dehydration. This is why most bulimics die. Some friends were trying to wake me up after an OSU game. It was like a night of partying. So somebody put cocaine under my nose to try to wake me up.
Classic move.
It was a yeah, I was like really scared, like in that line of thinking. Not so great for someone who is in my state of potassium depletion and electrolyte malfunction. So I wind up in the hospital. I'm 19. I'm underage. There are substances in my system. Clearly, I also have an eating disorder. There was no co-occurring treatment at the time. So they were like, we can either get a cop involved or you can go to treatment. and then you can go to eating disorder treatment. These were outpatient things. So I was
Okay.
like, well, I'm going to rehab.
Yeah. For substance abuse.
Yes.
Okay.
Which was wild because I'm 19 and I'm in this like outpatient day-to-day program. I'm having to do 3-a-days, like 3 AAs a day, and go to this program, but I'm with adults. I'm the youngest person in the room. So I'm with lawyers, doctors. Like that blew my mind because when you're that young, you really think adults have it together.
Right.
So I'm also terrified that this doctor who's talking about being blacked down surgeries is not losing their license, that this lawyer who is on coke like all the time, even in all of his court cases, is not going to get disbarred. I'm just like over here being like, how many people are on drugs?
I'm not safe
All the-
anywhere.
This is not good for my anxiety,
These
right?
people are supposed to have our backs. What is happening?
These are
Yeah.
right. And so the thing is, and I didn't want to be sober. So the thing is, I like purged my way through that.
That's an interesting statement, right? This is that you didn't come to this in your own volition. You
Not
were
on this
forced
time.
to go. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
this one. Well, the thing is there was too much going on. Like there was too much in my body because also like what led up to the heart thing and all of this stuff that was going on with this guy. And like, I was not prepared to stop and face my life and sit in that level of anxiety and tolerate what it was going to take to feel safe. I didn't have a safe place to be.
Yeah.
Rehab's not safe. You're with a bunch of people detoxing. And like, again, years later, when I'm teaching in a rehab and I'm running groups, everybody's in a really bad mood who's in detox.
Yeah.
When you're
Not great.
no,
Yeah.
especially people who don't want to be there.
Right.
So that was my first experience. But the thing that was really cool, and this also informed things later, was back to back going from substance abuse treatment to eating disorder treatment. Because in substance abuse treatment, you are on metal chairs. You are not comfortable. They don't care about your feelings. They're like, you know who's the problem? You. You go to eating disorder treatment, you got couches, you got snacks. You know who's the problem? Your parents. Everybody else. It's not me. You know, it's like you're so coddled. And so the thing is, though, I come right out of rehab. So, of course, I'm like scaring the shit out of everybody. 'Cause everybody else is like crocheting. Like, I'm just so sad. And I'm like, you're the problem, right? I'm so I was just no, we don't do this here. I was like, I'm so good at treatment. Like, I was good I am. And they were like, we don't do that here. And
I
I'm
grabbed that concept right up and ran with it. Brought it over here.
like, right.
Only for you to put it in the closet. I don't understand.
And it was all, you know, it's a group of girls.
Right.
And so the other thing though about this is it becomes like the hierarchy of like the cafeteria where like everybody would immediately gravitate into groups. Like I did eating disorder treatment 5 times. These were 4-week outpatients, but later I'm in partial hospitalization. My parents would never do inpatient because my dad can kind of sound very intense in a lot of the stories I tell, but his delivery, I say often, his delivery was off, but a lot of things he did were correct. I model certain things I do off of things that he did successfully, but one of them is he was like, you are not going to recover in an environment that is not the real world and then come back to the real world and be set up to fail. Like when people are like, send her here, it had horses. I was like, send me there. I will heal there. He's like, guess who's not getting you a horse when you come back? This sounds like a recipe for disaster. Or what? You're going to learn how to heal with a horse and you're going to come back and say you want a horse? No.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is that over the course of time, and of course, while this all went on, I'm getting diagnosed. I kept having to like confront my practitioners. I get diagnosed all the time with ADHD. They're like, let's give you, I'm like, I'm an addict. I don't feel like you should give me that drug because also I have not committed to you that I'm going to stay sober. This sounds like a terrible idea. I don't want to take that. They're like, well, then you're not going to be able to focus. I was like, then I guess I'm not going to be able to focus. But at the time, because of the thing that happened with my heart, I was really afraid of overdosing. And with my therapist at the time, we worked together for years through the place. It's now the center, what do they call it now? The Center for Balanced Living, but it was just the Center for Eating Disorders and Psychotherapy for a long time. But I had a therapist who was my lifeline, but we would talk about me choosing the best, worst option. Like I had all of these things and it was just impossible for me to figure out which thing to cut off or whatever. But out of all the things I was going to choose, what was the best, worst option today? Usually I would wind up with a cigarette instead of purging or drugs or drinking. But out of all the things, what's my best worst option?
Yeah.
So I also started this whole thing about being realistic, where people would give me these things and I'm like, I hear you, but this does not fit into my actual life. So over the years, as this is all going on and I'm in and out of treatment, and then I'm aging. So now I'm in my mid 20s and I was working at, again, I grew up in Columbus. The Blue Danube was a bar, restaurant that was,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I still get recognized probably once a week by somebody who's like, dude. And I'm like, yeah. I was there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And there are people who saw me sometimes sober, sometimes not, and crying behind the bar sometimes. Yeah, this one guy, it's like that, that guy that you look back and you're just like, I got nothing. You just have to be like,
Yes.
oops, that's my oops. There was like the guy that I was like really in love with, like my first love, the guy who it took forever to like, am I over him? Who knows if you ever get over that guy? And then there's the guy where you're just like,
Ooh.
oh, there's my trauma. There's my trauma.
Yes.
Yeah, I too have no idea what that was. But he drove me into levels of just crazy where sometimes I just have to be like, yeah, sorry about that. Like I was
Going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm in treatment, I'm also working at the bar, having all these, like working with people where I'm, again, peer mediator, group counselor. My bar was always like, that's where I got so much practice, is that people would come in to seek my advice. Like it got out of hand sometimes. Like sometimes regulars would be like, hey, I brought my girlfriend in. This is who I've been talking about. They tell like, oh, this is Rachel. I was like, absolutely fucking not. Like, this is like not a good idea.
Yeah.
But it was like, what, it was
Right.
stuff like that in my 20s, where it all kind of turns towards what happened now. And that's like such a shorthand of all this stuff. Like you can pile on, rape, like just all sorts of stuff was just a mess of my time.
I feel like so many people who are in recovery and who have gotten sober then have to spend the time thinking about how long they punish themselves and blame themselves for things that weren't their fault.
For sure. And I think that rape culture was just accepted, especially at that time. Like, because the thing is, I wish I could say it was that I was so easily carried out of situations, and I was a blackout drinker. So I'd be ragdoll passed out drunk, and it just like became common knowledge that I would not wake up. Like it was pretty fucked. And there were like people I knew where all of a sudden and people wouldn't tell me what happened. And it was so, and then I'm being more of it. I joke now where like I'm so seasoned with humiliation that I'm just like, whatever I would say to people that I made a career out of the worst stories of my life because people wouldn't stop telling them. I'm from here. And I was like, you know what? Like that's, you know what? Yes. I'm so sad about that. I'll be back. Right. And then I did. And so, cause even like, so one of the things that I ended up doing, 2016, I was teaching at OSU for a department that's closed now, but it was the Department of Student Civility and Empowerment. And I was teaching a class for students who had been sexually assaulted and raped. I was teaching yoga. So when I started to get into yoga when I was 28, 29, I relapsed again. And it was it was the worst I'd ever relapsed. It was the first time that anorexia took over my body unconsciously. Like I didn't choose it. And then all of a sudden I really understood this disease. I was so screwed. My body couldn't hold food. I couldn't wake up. I was starving to death and I'd lost my insurance. So again, this treatment program who I'd been through so many times, they're like, we'll give you a sliding scale of $10,000 for 1 month. And I was like, I'd rather die. And that was I was like, I can't do this. And everybody knew that. I was like giving up and that kind of stuff. And like, all I can say, and it's like, it's one of those moments where it just is what it is. There was a day that I had drank the night before. I knew that my body would have the reaction that it did. And the next morning, like I just started that tunnel vision stuff started. My body started sweating. I'm vomiting. I'm everything and whatever. I make my peace with it. I pass out and I woke up and I was fine. And all I know from there is that things just started to make sense. But I started to like breathe and like move my body and all this stuff. And people were like, I think you're doing yoga. And I was like, am I? What's that? And I looked into it and I was like, I think I'm doing yoga. Like, that's crazy. But it was like, the thing about it wasn't the vinyasa yoga that other people were doing. This is like 2013. But all I can also say is that things started to happen in my life that were unexplainable. You couldn't make it make sense. I go on a trip with somebody in my life and a guy who I had worked with at a hotel when I was 20, who had thrown me out of his house. The last time I saw him, he threw me out of his house because I wouldn't sleep with him, and like threw his sweatshirt at me and was like, "Good luck getting home," kind of thing. He ends up working at that hotel. Right in Sacramento, California. He upgrades our room to the business class floor. He yeah. And this trip was like magical. I'm telling my friend, like, yeah, I got this like plan about, I'm going to teach yoga and help people in recovery. He's like, what the fuck do you know about yoga? I was like, that I'm doing it and and it works. Right. And he's like, but what's your plan? I was like, it's to not slip. He's like, your plan is don't slip. I was like, yes. We walk around the corner. No shit. There's a graffiti production we were looking for. It says in purple letters, Rachel, don't slip. I still have like a picture of this. He's like, what the fuck is that? I was like, I know, right? And of course it was also legal to smoke out on the streets there. So and I'm like, this is talking to me. Like that part of it, not as grounded as I am now. And I was so much more free at that point, like having a great time. And I'm telling everybody, like, because again, I'm thinking that this is it. That if you get upside down, the universe will conspire with you. But I come home and I'm making progress with all of this. And I told, again, foot in my mouth, I tell everybody to go fuck themselves because I got it this time and I'm going to be healthy and this is it. Like, screw you guys. I'm getting healthy.
Yeah.
But I do a yoga training program. I piss everybody off because I'm in the group, thinking that everybody has found the state of enlightenment through their practice. No one has any idea what I'm talking about. And I'm so excited. I have my bandana matched to my, chakra that I'm working on and like my crystals. And I bring my little like altar stuff on the edge of my mat. And everybody's like, what are you doing? And I was like, and this is again, like with what we're talking about, this is also foreshadowing for my life. If I'm for you, I am fucking for you. Like people ride really, if you are put off by me, you are put off, and respectfully, I get it. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. They're like, you're a little too excited. I'm like, I hear you. I kind of fall under that whole thing of like, that if I'm too much, you're also probably not enough for me. So like we're actually on the same page, as in, if my energy is going to be too big, then we're not going to be able to mirror in a way that feels good. Anyways, you're doing the right thing. You should stay away.
Right. Totally.
At the time, though, again, do I have boundaries? So I'm just like, doing my thing. But I'm telling everybody, I'm going to help eating disorders. Like, this is it. Because my big thing, the voice went away. And that voice that anybody who has an eating disorder knows, that just like rips you on a moment to moment basis. My brain had finally found peace. Drugs, no medication, no therapy. It was so exciting. That was the best part of my life. And
you just started doing these movements. You didn't really like go to a class, or you just started like listening to your body.
Yeah, I was too scared to go to a class. I mean, honestly, the yoga moment that happened was when I was laying there on the floor thinking I was dying. And I was trying to find peace in my body, because I also have the belief that we leave as whatever we leave in is what we are. And I want to leave in peace. And I, again, didn't know that was some yogic kind of thing, but I was trying to calm myself down as much as I could in that moment.
Thinking that you were dying.
Yeah.
In that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So when everything came back and I started going on this path, the other thing is I was very clear that you can find a feeling to meditate on. And if you can really breathe that feeling into your body, you can be in that feeling anywhere. So that's what I was big on in the beginning. Again, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. The trauma world started to open up after that, because the thing is, like, I started saying all these things that people were like, have you ever heard of Bessel van der Kolk? The body keeps the score. They're like, this guy is saying things that you're saying. I was like, yeah, like tight. If there's a white guy saying it, people are going to listen.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right? People are like, you need to train with him. I'm like, how in the world am I going to do that? Right? What the fuck? So another thing I'd been doing was I'd been working in a prison. I'd gone in to help teach yoga to inmates. My big thing was, and this is, again, I was big on two-sided healing at this part. I believe if I can smile at you and you can feel it, that in the same way, if you hit me and you feel better, what in the world did you put in my body that now is out of yours?
Right.
And again, whether people believe that that's a real thing or not, chemoneural sensory, as in my endocrine system, hormone system, is affected by how you are treating me. Whether people want to prove that or not, we all know that is absolutely true, that the way that you treat me is affecting my hormonal output.
Totally.
Amen. So when I'm working in the prison and I'm talking to these men, and I'm working at Marion Correctional, so the same place that Piper Kerman, Orange is the New Black, was working. This one day she called me. She was like doing a writing class there. I was like, shut up. What she want from me? She's like, hey, how you get these guys to talk about their crimes? I can't get them to do that. And I heard you can. So I was just curious. I was like, I just tell them that I've loved men who have hit me. So like, no shade. I'm just trying to figure out like what happened, but like no judgment for me. It would just be a service if we could discuss it. She's like, oh yeah, I can't say that. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Like that kind of thing. But I was realizing that I was able to really create community by just being very honest of saying like, hey, listen, I'm not judging you. I want to understand you. But I was working with these men on, where do you feel angry? What does it feel like? Like starting to do somatics.
Like where in your body is this anger coming from?
Where do you feel it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you feel it? Okay, you feel it there. Then where's it go? Then where's it go? Then where's it go? And you'd watch it. The wheels are like turning in their heads. And all these grown men are saying, no one's ever asked me this. The other thing though, that's the problem, is every single guy I talked to had been abused as a kid. So I'm just logging all of this again into my head. Now, Bessel van der Kolk. So years later, the woman who had brought me into all that, because I'm doing it volunteer-wise, I'm going, once a week, like just driving back and forth doing it with another yoga instructor and sometimes by myself. But this woman, she was like, hey, let me thank you. I wanted to take you to this thing at Kripalu. This Bessel van der Kolk is giving a weekend workshop. I was like, there he is. Okay, we're going. Okay, so like him and Gabor Mate, who was like my favorite, I was like, okay, like we're going to check these off the list. So I go and Bessel van der Kolk is there, and he ends up, I end up getting to have a couple conversations with him, actually like one-on-one. But he's saying to me, I'm like, I read your book. I get what you're saying about fascia and, bodies and stored trauma. But what about women? He's like, what about women? And I was like, well, women pick up multiple people's stuff. We have like multiple fascias going on in our body. Like, when's that going to get studied? And he was like, why, whose interest would that be to study it? And I'm like, women, right? And he's like, we'd have to do away with the DSM. That's never going to get proven, but keep doing what you're doing. He's like, don't say that to men like me. Just do your thing. But yeah, of course people know that, but no one's going to prove that. I'm like, oh, log it away. Okay. He's like, but come to the International Trauma Conference, like, next spring. Like you'll get the information you want there.
Expand on that. I want you to expand why we would have to get rid of the DSM. Explain why he's
and what is the DSM?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go get
do a small little dive on this.
Just a little dive on this one. Let me just dive. When he asked me what I did, and he was like, I can tell that you're an energy person. Because also this is where I'll like caveat. I do work energetically and I understand the nervous system. I understand how to, so nurturing energy, let's just say that nurturing is giving with no expectation, giving without a need to receive back. But it's the same thing that when someone makes you feel warm and safe, it will change your entire chemistry. Okay. So what he's saying is, so the DSM would be that if you get a diagnosis that says that you are in a permanent state of some kind of mental disorder, that if you actually can prove that if somebody would give you oxytocin or love you or calm you down or hug you, there's actually no diagnosis, because then the nervous system calms down enough that it resets. When I work with people, I take them into, one of the things that I do in my private work is I will take people into almost a meditative state, and I'm having them do a visualization in the same way that our spine, you could think about it like a breaker system, that in your house, if a certain part of your house goes out, you just have to flip the breaker, right? So what if there's a part of your nervous system that has just been offline for so many times that it's developed now a neurosis, a loop that is neurotic, and that neurotic loop that's trying to turn back on, but what it needs to turn back on is to feel safe. What if that's what you go and you're trying to explain, but you don't know that's what you're trying to explain, and then you get a diagnosis? What if somebody didn't say to you, hey, have you tried feeling safe yet? I think that's why when they've talked about now ketamine therapies and mushroom therapies, and I don't suggest or support that all the time, but what it's doing is it's allowing the system to remember safety amidst a traumatic event.
Right. Yeah.
PTSD can't be accounted for in the DSM, because then you would also be sourcing that actually it's something else that came into the system. For instance, when I'm doing the work with these men, I needed help. Whatever these guys introduced to my system did not exist there. I was not abused by my family. I didn't have that kind of thing. There was clearly something familiar in my family system that it could wake up in my system. So it's somewhere probably in my family line, right? Which I found out later, but it was not an immediate experience.
Right.
So my system just doesn't know how to get out of a loop. And so that's the thing, is that he's saying, if you study that with women, and women know, if you sit in community with women, it's pretty wild, some of the stuff that can shift, especially women who are naturally nurturing moms. That's the thing of like what some of the work that I have been able to do, of why I don't do a traditional Western route, is I get to love people's families. I get to love their kids. I get to actually have relationships but a lot of my kids, like I had a kid who had a really severe, all these diagnoses. She had tics, she had all this stuff. And I was like, she doesn't have learning I hear you, but she has trauma. And everybody was so nervous about her going away to college and like all this kind of stuff. And again, I'll thrive on that hill. I was like, I believe she'll be fine. Like, let's just try. It's her senior year now in college. She skydives. She does everything. She's great. And now she's just like the normal kind of things, but there's nothing going on for her because she was able to experience, again, a steady, consistent, stable nervous system to keep coming back to every time she needed an outsource of regulation.
So he was saying basically that by you studying this, it's going to flip everything that we know and that how we've been doing it, right? It's always been done this way, a whole model of things. So if you do this, great, have fun, but like you're not going to change the model.
The DSM is the book of mental illness diagnosis, right? So,
well, it hands the healing. And the thing is, some of it, the problem is, right, it gets gray. There are some things, like it's not everything. Like some people, I believe there is a time and a place for medication when it's needed. And it's not that. It's just that, because that's where some people, it gets too black and white. Oh, so you think it's all bullshit. And it's like, no, I don't think that at all. But what I do think is that it's strange to me that anybody would argue that we haven't been empowered to heal with our own body, with our own community, with our own parents, that a lot of times somebody won't say it, because we've all figured out that our parents have their own trauma from their parents, from their parents, from theirs. It's not their fault that they don't know what to do. Like I always tell people that if you come to me and you have all this anger, and I help you renegotiate it because I understand how to do that. But then I come to you with my anger and you don't know what to do. And then I'm mad at you. It's like, why would I think you could do that? You came to me, you didn't know how to handle yours, so I can't bring it to you.
Right. Totally.
So the problem is with most parents of what happens is these little people show up and they are asking for something the parent is uncomfortable with, or that the parent has repressed, or they're drinking away every night, or they're shutting down, or they've medicated. So also we've not given another option. So the thing is, when I'm saying to him, it's not even, and when he was saying that to me, Bessel van der Kolk is saying, he said this really smug thing to me, because this is before he had done his mushroom journey, hasn't calmed down. But he said at first, when I said, doesn't everybody know this kind of thing? He said, well, yeah, of course people know this. And he was like, men work really hard to kill women like you. That's when he was like, don't say that to me. Like, he's like, I'm trying to do you a favor. Like, just don't, just do what you're doing. But this is a long fight for, this kind of thing.
Right.
And then that piggyback with that was when I went to the trauma conference, I got to study with Gabor Mate, which was the best. But he's very big on that addiction is an attachment disorder. And I know
that makes a lot of sense.
And with eating disorders, they're a nurturing deficit. But how do you say that? How do you say to somebody, you really have to, I have some parents, like they are rock stars of what they're willing to hear. They have to take a really deep breath of being like, you're saying I dropped the ball on loving my kid. I'm like, somewhere. I'm not saying that you don't, but I'm saying somewhere it didn't land. And they're like, okay, how do we fix it? Right. And a lot of that is admitting, like, I wasn't there for you. And a lot of it really is that of like having to actually, like, that goes into the spiritual lens of it, of forgiveness. Yes, you should forgive to help yourself, but sometimes an apology really goes a long way.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing of like repair, that also with the DSM, it doesn't account for attempting repair in relational issues.
We also don't get that demonstrated a lot to us by media or anybody else, right? And I don't know if you guys know the whole Heated Rivalry show. Have you heard of this?
One of my kids is obsessed with it. That's the only reason I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
shout out Macy. That's
So it's a Canadian show, and it's based upon
What's it called again?
Heated Rivalry.
Heated Rivalry. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's about two hockey players who fall in love, right?
Okay.
And their story. Two boys.
Okay.
And their story. And one thing that I see, like I could choke up thinking about it, but it keeps going viral in the queer community is when he came out to his mom, sorry, spoiler alert, he was starting to apologize for not telling her. And she was like, no. I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you could have told me. Like, I'm sorry that you felt that way. And how many people, because if you think about the trauma that the queer community goes through, you think about how impactful that is to see that in media of a parent saying, no, I'm sorry that you felt that way, that you couldn't trust me in that moment. And that's why that is so impactful. And that scene everyone's talking about, it's just a complete mirror to what we all wish we had that moment.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that was incredibly bizarre in like family nights and stuff like that with like eating disorder treatment was it was very clear, like with that you'd watch it. Like, my mom and I, we would talk about it. Like that was one of the hardest parts was, the parent going, don't you understand what this is doing to me? In what world am I available to I don't even understand what's doing to me. Leave me alone. Like that's kind of the problem. Like I can't understand what it's doing to you because usually by the time, and that's the resentment is I have this disorder because you don't care about what's happening to me.
Right. Yep.
But again, then that becomes the whole, well, you're making choices and you brought this on yourself. You brought this on to me. And like, that's the headache. When you're a kid, you don't have enough life experience to like roll that back. And like what I have watched with like what you're talking about is that over the years, my mission statement when I got going on stuff was to be the adult that I needed. And I think it's been more than to become the adult that I needed. But in that journey, I've had to learn that for me to be who I needed for me, I also needed to be somebody my parents could have listened to. So I've had to become, it's kind of like over the years when I wanted people to take me more seriously with what I was learning with yoga, and I had to go into the more science piece of it. You can't just talk about, the sacral chakra and like all this kind of stuff. You got to talk about the endocrine system, like, because it lines up perfectly with that. You have to make it make sense of if there's a disruption here, which hormones is it disrupting? And how do I balance the hormones, not just my creativity? Because you got to meet those, you got to meet that generation where they're at.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to also really help a kid. And so the thing is that when I started then moving from what I'm talking to you about with the trauma stuff, because here's the other thing. I don't know if y'all have paid attention how in the last 10 years, it's like trauma all of a sudden became this buzzword and this big thing. So yes, people were exploding with it, but like no one knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I'm so triggered. That was a big thing. I'm so triggered. Yeah.
Right. And, and that's the thing. And you went from like, the thing is though, is that then all of this stuff did start to explode. And I was not prepared. I wasn't prepared. You can't be for what came up about my past. And I was thrown into like all of these things that I didn't know how to organize about what had happened. I'm going through it with my best friend. It turns out we share this like traumatic thing. And of course, and then this is my best friend. And then professionals are like, you two need to have nothing to do with each other. And we like double down on like, absolutely not. Like we're going to keep, and I don't know, who knows? It's hearsay. And looking back of what would have been best for me, my parents were like, bail now. And I'm just like, you're so mean. Like, this is my best friend. Do you think we're still friends? She bailed, like she bailed later anyways. Like, and I get it now, but none of us knew what we were doing. We were all just like thrown into this. And I've always at least had the consciousness because I grew up in rehab. It was my formative years. I've always been witnessing what I've been going through, knowing like one of my big phrases is live the story the way you want to tell it. Is I always live understanding that I'm going to explain how I handled it, if it worked or if it didn't. One of the biggest things that I think is different about my recovery, or at least I've heard feedback, is I'm very honest that I took a lot of very earnest risks in my life and they did not work out. And you have to hold space for that. Like I have some people where I work with them, their marriages fell apart, stuff like that. And I say like, because I don't have the Western rules where I'm very direct and I'll say, like, well, yeah, but you married him. That was a wild card move. And you were hoping it would work out. And everybody who said this won't work out was right. You took a risk. It didn't work out.
Right.
And I get that. And that's one of those hard things where you get to this age and you're like, okay, That's I feel like about my career, I feel like it's the same way some people feel about kids in like really, really bad situations where you don't regret the kid, but you would have chosen a different partner kind of thing. I love what I do and I'm so grateful for the families I've helped, but I would have made different choices in the past to not have gone through some of the things that I did because I saw it working out differently than it did
Right.
because I didn't understand relationships.
Yeah. And so when you were at the conference, you were able to study and really get some mentorship, it sounds like.
Well, at the conference, here's what was the craziest part of it. This was the big aha at the conference is they were talking about, are we going to release this certain information to the public? And the information was about the brain, but not this brain. They were talking about how, you know, that no one seems to know that we have 3 other neural bundles in our body that actually are louder. Like if you think about it, it's this obvious. If you're in a coma and you're brain dead, your heart keeps beating, you still need food, and you can still get pregnant. So this is all still online, even when this is completely gone. So then it makes sense that head meds, when you have like the, you know, the disclaimer could cause heart palpitations, indigestion, sexual dysfunction. They just are trying to cut off either this, or this. So again, then I'm like, all right, I see my mission is to understand that, and that. So, you know, then after that, and also mind you, another thing though that's happening with all this. So where I was kind of going was saying I'm in this whole trauma thing. So I, you know, who said, I am fine, I got this. I relapse and I relapse with substances. And in so my sobriety date is 2019, but in 2018, I had done really well for 5 years. I'm like doing great. I'm traveling around the country. I'm lecturing. I'm teaching yoga. I'm like in and out of all these places. And then I have this night where I cannot seem to handle one of my big risks that is not going to work out. And when I get that information, I take one more shot. Next thing I know, I wake up in the morning. I have a broken arm, totaled car, 3 charges. Like I told you, anything I do, I go hard. I do it well. Right. Again, lucky for me, I'd done court, again, privileged situation. I had done a training for human trafficking victims. I knew, so a judge who was still a judge at the time took my case. I knew my prosecutor. I had a friend, you know, whatever. Everybody was like, we can just kind of make this go away. And I was like, I feel like I should have a consequence. I just took the year. I was like, I need to just be. I took the year. I still was teaching, but I was like really licking my wounds and going inward on this stuff. I finally then decided to put everything down June 22nd, 2019. And I left town for a little bit to try to kind of like restore my faith in not just myself, but like in faith. And so I do that. I'm kind of working for some clients, like coming back and forth. And then COVID happens. I had started doing a series at a rehab in Southern Ohio. So now I'm working with trafficking victims who are also in recovery and, you know, groups, so men and women groups. As that all went on, that turned into years. I would drive to Southern Ohio, especially during COVID. It was great. 4 days a week, I'd drive down there and I'm doing classes with all these people. And of course, like in the recovery community, because I'd been sober before, and in the recovery community, it's actually more common than not to have relapses. So like, yeah, when you can still, you know, I'd have that question where people are like, but you were not even that sober. I'm like, I hear ya. Actually, when people are getting sober, it's more relatable to be closer to their part. Like at this point, I'm pretty unrelatable. I've been sober for 7 years. I shoot it straight. I go to bed by 9. I get up at 5. I follow a routine. I like eat my protein. You know, like I'm like so disciplined that yeah, even me at a certain point would be like, fuck her. Like I can't relate to that at all. Sounds like a dream, but like screw you, lady.
That's not even close to where I am.
Close to where I'm at. So I'm with my population and I'm teaching everybody and I'm running men and women's groups. And honestly, that's something that like I know I want to get back to. It was so fun. My classes were great. I feel like for the most part, like everybody knew the days I was there because people just felt better. Because I also believe that you have to, like, this is life or death. Like that was a population. I was not a hero. I have never done heroin. But I was aware that multiple people in the room would be dead within 4 to 6 months. They always were. And then a really uncomfortable thing that I had to learn was in all my women's groups, somebody would also be murdered within 4 to 6 months. And it just kept picking up the pace. And so I'm learning. So what was the duality was, so I'm teaching in Southern Ohio, I'm doing this, and then I'm driving to Columbus and where I live. And then I'm working with a private clientele and I'm working with people's kids and I'm working with like families and I'm like helping dynamics. And so I'm also seeing the difference now in social class and in what problems like how much stronger and honest the community is with people who don't have money, but how many resources are available, but what the politics are when you do.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
So again, I'm logging it all like in my head and this kind of thing. And over time, as again, all of this is happening, I'm also growing up, like I'm maturing. And one of the things is in my recovery, right? Like I took my first drink at 12. I was a full blown alcoholic. I didn't know that. I didn't want to admit that by 17. I'm like blackout drinking during the day and all this stuff. But I never drank normally. Like even when people think I did, and that's been one of the harder things for people, like I never saw you out of control when you were older. Some people don't even know I totaled my car. And I'm like, well, yeah, that was on purpose.
Yeah.
I'm an anorexic, like I'm a private disorder. I was like, I keep my things to myself. Well, now I don't. That's what people are like, you don't keep anything to yourself. I used to. But that's also part of my recovery is I have to be rigorously honest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it all like catches up and it's like, there's so much I'm sure I'm like leaving out, but when it's like, how did you get from there to here? I believe in service. And I have always somehow, like, again, when I say that whole like Rachel don't slip thing, it's bizarre that anything I'm trying to work on will show up in my life. Like, even when I was like working in the rehab, and that was the thing is like the guys, I was so effective. And everybody was like, how do you know this so well? And I'm like, well, not to sound like too much of a loser, but I was kind of betting it all on somebody and it didn't work out. And I really, and like, but I had that much like, okay, you know, like I'm just using the word God for spiritual, not religious, but I'll use that word, creator, God, whatever. But it felt like, whoa, I had so much energy and so much love. And I was so prepared. I had a whole plan because also the person who I was very in love with, there was no way he was going to get sober if it was no fun. So I had made sure that I had a lot of fun information. It was fun. I was ready to do it fun. And then he was like, yeah, right. I'm not getting sober. And I was like, shit. Not only am I horribly embarrassed and humiliated because I told everyone that we were like soul contract spiritually, shit, this isn't going to look good. So then, you know, again, God did, so embarrassing, but God did me a favor. Yeah, that was like, I like also too, I was like, let me just add insult to injury. I like shaved my head. I was like, I'm just like resetting everything. I sure did. I was teaching down there, shaved head. Yeah, like just whatever. But I was like, okay, let me reset myself. But the thing is again, I got to understand so much about my own dynamic that I did not know. I'm getting to ask these men questions. I'm getting to like do all this stuff. And I'm working with women where I understand where they're coming from. And we're all just kind of healing together. When I started to meet kids, I have worked with kids where it's unreal how specific their issue is to mine. I'm looking at healing karma and trauma with my mom, and I'm looking at stuff with her mother, with my grandmother. I wind up with a kid with the exact same birthday as my grandmother. I tell her to give her eating disorder a name, you know, name the voice. She's like, I don't want to keep this name. I don't know why this name keeps coming to mind, but it's Helen. My grandmother's name was Helen Mary. I'm like,
yeah.
Like, and right before all that had happened, when like, you know, I do look at astrology. I love that stuff. But like, years before when like all the planets were moving, Uranus is moving into Taurus, and it's like all the energy was shifting. And I was really upset because I didn't want to have to deal with the karma of my grandfathers, which really meant how much did it affect my grandmothers. So I was going to have to learn about them to understand why my grandmothers were the way they were. Again, embarrassing, but it was true that I had to understand the men in my life if I wanted to understand myself, because nothing had been more influential. I have to heal the wounds in me that were introduced by them.
Yeah.
Right.
But when I didn't want to do that, because I was really into like my grandmothers, I was kind of like who I would pray to and stuff. And they're like, come on, it won't be that bad. Think about your grandfathers. And my grandfather's middle names were both Joseph. But I'm thinking to myself, like, they also had nicknames. Like one went by Joe, one went by Okie because his first name was Hugh, because everybody's name was Hugh.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, so I'm like Okie and Joe. And it was like, no. And I'm like, oh, because my grandpa that went by Joe, his name was Morris. So I'm like, Hugh Morris, right? Like, don't lose my sense of humor. Because my grandfathers were both really charming and really funny.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you could guess some of the things that my grandmothers went through. But
For sure.
right. But so all of it has been like all of it to say, I believe in the experience of just being a real person and understanding the nuance of everything that we go through. And for most women, if you say, have you had an experience with an eating disorder? They're going to say yes. Have you had an experience with substance abuse? They're going to say yes. Have you had an experience with a man that you are not over? Even if you're with a good one, they're probably going to say yes. And so you have to think about that, is if that stuff is unresolved, how much of an adult can you really feel like? How much can you really be steady? And I have a kid the other weekend. It was her 18th birthday, or the other week. And I told her when she was 16 that I would take her to get her belly button pierced if she wanted, like if she didn't drop it by then or whatever. And she's like, well, you'll do it too. I was like, yeah, I'm thinking she'll like back out, but she didn't. So the other week, we go get our belly buttons pierced. I'm 40, never have had it before. Right. And she's like, she thinks this is the coolest thing ever. She's like, oh, and I was like, who do you think I'm going to show my belly button to?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have social media. It's literally just for me to giggle.
Right.
Yeah.
When I look in the mirror. But that's the thing, is that I'm at this stage of my life where, in the same way, I don't care if somebody else drinks. I really don't. I know that it works for me to be sober, and I know that I wish I could enjoy it. So if other people can, cheers to them, but I can't. So like my population are people that also know that they can't. I'm there for those people. But I've decentered it, as in, if alcohol's in the room, I'm not distracted by it being in the room. It just is. But that's how I feel also. Like, I've been in that wave of women with men. If a guy's good to you, that's amazing. I love that. Please tell me that story. That's awesome. But like, I'm not going to be distracted by it. And I've had to learn to decenter sexuality. Again, I think all for somebody empowered, but I know what it does to me to feel the need to age sexy. I need to just age and let the young people be sexy around me and be like, okay, that's great. I'm so happy for you. Go tell somebody else. And so there's that piece. And there's, the letting food just be food, and having peace with everything that has happened to me, but being able to then be steady and not ignore how influential all of it was to hold space for people going through those, what I call transitions, and how to help them continue to reorient to get to a place where they can make these choices for themselves.
Yeah. So at what point so it sounds like you were doing the yoga and you were also doing therapy. At what point did you morph all of that into what you're doing right now? And what is that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And I actually asked him. So I polled like some of my kids who I've been working with, and kids like 18 to 24, 26, people I've worked with for years, where I was like, what do you tell people I am? Like, how do you describe me? And what's the difference between me and a traditional therapist? Because I knew they were all going to say, I just say therapist because you told me, because I've asked them to stop saying she's a witch. I'm like, don't say that.
I actually like that.
Yeah. Like me, in the 20, like whatever, I'd be like, people need to take me seriously. Right?
Stop calling yourself a witch.
Yeah, we're like, everybody's calling me a witch. Yeah.
They burned us years ago, not that long ago. Okay.
Yeah, well, one of the things too that also scared me was I didn't want people to think that I was genuinely manipulating how people feel. Because I do have that ability. Like, I'm really good at creating a vibe.
Yeah.
But so with my kids, like what they say is they've now been like, they've been coached to say somatic practitioner, because I'm working with the body. And I do encourage, like I always encourage anybody I work with to also have a therapist, have a whatever, because we're actually all going to say the same things.
Right.
And yeah, like I have a lot of like working relationships with therapists. But the thing is, when I asked them, I was like, what title do you give me? Genuinely, they just say, they're like, I don't know. I just say you're Rachel. Like all their friends will be like, I want a Rachel. And I'm like, that's kind of fun. My name's become like a description. It's hard for anybody to say what I do about what I do with how I work with people. When I teach, like I'm an educator. I'll teach workshops for different groups, whether it's yoga, or a trauma weekend, or working with staffs or something like that. So educator, somatic practitioner.
Define somatic practitioner. I think a lot of people may not know what that means. Somatic practitioner.
Yeah, that's becoming the new buzzword. It's body first. Yeah, instead of, so I just work with, instead of trying to I don't diagnose, I don't anything. So if you have a diagnosis, epic. But what we're working with is making sure that the body is online for some of this stuff. Because it's like, I understand a lot of things, but when people would say, where do you feel that? I didn't always know. So I help people actually have a felt experience so that they can process a feeling. And a lot of people never actually, I'm learning, have that experience. They might feel a feeling, but then again, their heart stops beating, and then we're working in like calming down
Mm.
instead of learning how to actually process that feeling. Like there's two things happening that with that, if you start to get anxious, the feeling didn't stop. You're now just distracted by the anxiety. So I teach people how to hold that nuance of both and how to actually continue to move the feeling, and the heart will slow down and you didn't lose the process, so that we're
Yeah.
creating
Yeah.
pathways.
I think especially in this time of information overload, you have like
Yeah.
a million social media things, all the stuff, right? And we all know those people. I've been one of them before that just consume a bunch of information about how, like, I'm listening to Girl Wash Your Face, and then I'm reading a Brene Brown book. You consume all the information. That's cool. But if you don't know what's happening in your body, you're missing the whole actionable part of this.
Well, I make sure you do the practices. Like that's the thing is like, because again, people read all sorts of the books, and I go, but did you do the practices? And people are like, no, listen, I'm like, I don't care. I already know the information. Did you do the practices?
Yep.
And so that's what I do with my kids. It's like, I'm like the ultimate accountability buddy, I guess. But in a way, like, and I've just made it fun. Like, I have one kid, and then they all wanted it, where I would literally like blow a whistle at her. I would like send videos. I had like a sweatband, and I had a whistle, like a coach's whistle. Yeah. And I would, when she was like spinning, I would send her a video of me blowing the whistle, being like, stop, like, just now breathe with me, because you have to interrupt the loop. And my kids, they know that. There are times where I'm just like, if you want to keep talking, hang up and call your therapist. Like, but if you actually want to do something about it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I start to do that where when there's disruption, because it goes through that from disruption to dismantling to reorientation to integration. You're going to disrupt the system, but then you have to actually like see what's happening, start to back away from how that's going to go, and start to create this new pathway. And I do that with them. I create the felt experience of it.
So do you do one-on-one
Yeah.
sessions? And if so, like talk to us about that. Where can people book a session with you?
So there's a space on my website to send an email and then I usually will, if it's the right, you want a consultation call or whatever, I'll send my number and we set it up through text. And I have a studio space in Dublin. That's it, like you asked, like I don't have any socials. I've been word of mouth for a decade now. And so I haven't needed to, it kind of has felt, more of a, like, it's going to be unfair to then like open it up. And then like 20 people want in, and I'm like, I have like 3 spots.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where a lot of times what the niche place right now, it's like people who have a kid who have an eating disorder and they want to understand the rhythm and the cycle of it. I'm very good at giving parents, I've noticed nobody really gives parents like the step-by-steps of being like, here's what's happening. Here's what to say. Here's what not to say. Saying to the kid, here's what your role is. Here's what's happening, and keeping people on pace. So there's that part of like the more involved stuff. And then I just have sessions out of my studio space in Dublin where some people just want to experience the vagal, stimulation of actually coming into the body and just feeling themselves de-escalate, feeling that feeling when your stomach and your heart literally drop and everything just smooths out. And it's kind of that, I don't take people anymore unless it's we agree to it, like this out of body kind of spiritual, just Reiki only feeling. It's important to me to help people stay grounded and present. So keeping their circulation going, making sure that they can feel where everything is moving through their system.
Very cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah. The body keeps the score, right? Like that was the book that started all of this. I remember that it lives in your body. Trauma lives somewhere in your body. Your experiences live in your body. So how do you help people literally work through that? Is that a process of a question, answer, response, having an emotion, and then helping them keep them in their body? Is that part of what you do with them?
Let the body lead. What I do is I'm more just bring people's attention. I teach them to breathe. A lot of people have never breathed into their body, into their back, into their shoulders, really helping them in whatever cue. Because I've been teaching yoga for so long, of helping them understand. Like I can physically see where the body is stuck, or I'm going through reflex points of just noticing where there is not a connection And then again, bringing their awareness to how to breathe past it in a way that then they feel themselves open. And then it's more of, it's kind of like the yoga nidra idea of just saying what's coming up. What are you noticing? And then letting them lead with it. Unless somebody comes in with a specific, I know this, I want to try to process this, like, this is what I want to do. And then I'm like, okay, as long as, because I did have to learn the hard way years ago that sometimes you don't just bring people's attention to the place they're avoiding. Like that would be the thing where I'd be like, oh, they're avoiding this place. Let me just bring them. And then they're having like a panic attack. I'm like, shit.
They'll have a full meltdown. Yeah.
I'm like having them simple stuff and like grounding them. And that's the thing. Like I do appreciate as a practitioner that I've learned how to stay so steady and so calm when those things happen, that it's really amazing that like sometimes people I had this guy, this was so cool for like a year and a half. I was like, my dude, you're angry. Like you need to just get angry. Like it's like, he's like, no, I don't get angry. Like, it's bad. Like I was not raised to be an angry guy. I'm not going to be an angry guy. And I'm like, okay, like, well, I'm just saying like screaming would go a long way. That's all. Like, no big deal. And so then like a year and a half later, or like whatever, we have this session and all of a sudden he's like, I really want to scream. And I like put the bed up and I handed him a pillow. I was like, go, dude. And he just screamed into this thing and you could feel it, like the energy in the room. And, and I just was like excited for him. Right. And I was just like, and he's like, you're like smiling. And I'm like, and I was like, I know. Like, really? I was like, and of course and this is where I'm like uncomfortably honest. I was like, dude, I was like, thank you. That what a rush for me because I got to feel that and you're not going to hit me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I was like, that's like a drug. Like, I'm just like, oh, wow. Like raw human emotion. But I think like, that's the thing of like,
this is the part of her that I'm like, did she just say that she's addicted to the energy of a man being so angry that they would hit you without getting the physical? Like, that's part of it. There's so much, right? Like it's a man. Like, I came home and I was like, this woman is so fascinating to me. And I'm like, I don't meet very many people where I'm like, she's so fascinating. Like her energy and the things that you will admit to is so powerful. And I think it's so beautiful that you've lived this experience that allows you to get to this place where you can say those things that people would be like, what did she just say?
Listen,
I love it. I love it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that always fascinates me is, again, we're not all that evolved. Like if you pay attention, we're really not. We're not all that evolved. Like you look at what's going on in the world and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Right.
But a lot of the problem is self-control. Yeah. And again, their emotions that they can't just like have the feeling and then be like, huh. Like that's what I love about like women, like sometimes, my friends that I miss the most are people who just be like, girl, go. And just be like, oh my God. You're crying, you snot, whatever. And then you're like,
I feel much better.
Yeah, thanks, girl.
Yeah.
Thanks, girl. I was like, yeah, bitch, yeah. That's great. I was awesome. I'll talk to you later. And so the thing is, like, I feel bad that, like, men honestly don't always get, that was, like, the best part of, like, also working with groups, like, with what you're talking about. There was this guy, and he's in one of my groups. We do a meditation. We're, like, approaching the father wound. I'm teaching them about the father wound. They're all looking at me like this, like, whatever. I'm like, don't you think it's weird that sports are the only place you're allowed to have feelings? And they're like, I don't really think about it. I'm like, okay. So we meditate. And then afterwards, this guy who looks like a linebacker, he like, all of a sudden I was like, I just noticed, I was like, would you care to share? Like what, I'm just like watching. And he's like, starts talking. Then all of a sudden he's like, hold on, something's like wrong. I'm starting to feel like I'm sweating. My face feels weird. Like I feel nauseous. And one of the other guys yells out, it's just a feeling, man. Keep going. And that was the thing. He was about to say something so vulnerable. He was going to cry.
Yeah.
And it's like rising up here and it's getting to this place. And like, so even that, like, he
didn't know what it was. It was hard for him to.
And it's like, give me raw human emotion. Like when I was a little person, I would look at screens and just be, I'm just there because you're feeling what the person's feeling. People don't seem to remember that's the point of screens is you are feeling, if it's an effective actor, you're in their experience. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And we don't do that with each other. And so when someone is vulnerable in front of you and you're able to be there with them in the feeling, it has this opportunity to be incredibly healing.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like after that with the guy, like we were done.
Yeah.
And he was resolved, and I didn't. And that's the thing, like, you kind of are just like,
Yeah.
because, and he said, he was like, you're the first person in my life who's just allowing me to be angry and laughing about it. You're like, that's another thing with a lot of my kids. They're like, they say that all the time. They say that I make it okay to just be, for this all to be kind of messy.
Yeah. I think adults want control so badly over themselves and everyone else.
Why?
Exactly.
Boring.
But I think that's what makes all of us stop and try to control our own emotions, not because we think we should, but because we've observed that other people want us to do that.
Well, that's no fun.
No fun.
And that's kind of the thing. It's like, I feel like, I hope that that's where it's going. Like, my generation is pretty unserious, which I appreciate about us, that we were raised in the jackass culture, and we literally all can only take so much no fun.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is like, when people, there are things that I've done, where people would be like, you're so smart. Why did you do that? And of course I'm like, well, not to give you like too much of a biology lesson, but like in addicts, like the frontal lobe, they're like, no, shut up about the frontal lobe. I was like, short answering, because it was fun. It was fun. Didn't you think about who that was going to offend? I was like, someone who's offended by fun, ask me if I care.
Right. Yeah.
And it would be more of it, though, where people are like, well, that hurts my feelings. I'm like, well, it would have hurt my feelings not to do it. So again, also remembering that, like, with young people, and I do say this to them, I go, your parent can survive their feelings being hurt.
Yeah.
They'll be all right. They can survive being disappointed. Like, you're getting hurt by this. So why do you get to get hurt? Like, do you trust that they can survive being hurt? And that's one of the things I really hope stops with my generation. There's being encouraged to walk away from their parents. And that's the part it sucks, that people are not being encouraged to try to find a way to have conscious conversations or try to heal. Because I know that I wasn't prepared for that in my own healing. You get to a certain point, or I've gotten to a certain point, where it's too damaging to even explain how much I can't keep looping through the same things, because it's too hurtful for both people. I'm going to say something hurtful just by speaking from my place of resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has been a wild ride. And I have a lot to process over here, but that's amazing. And I just feel like there's so many people in my life with addiction issues and all of those things. And it's something that just lives with you forever. And you're always trying to navigate. And so I think the work that you're doing is so important for children, especially, whether it be with eating disorders and substance abuse, the parents helping understand the cycle. I think it's just amazing.
I'm hoping that it will continue to normalize for people that when you think one way for a very long time, that people have to have space for you, not only to stop the behavior, but to admit that you are thinking, that just because the behavior stops, the way you're thinking doesn't. And there has to be a long line of patience to actually realize, who am I and who do I want to become? And then that's what I walk with people through, is that transition of, unfortunately, a lot of times people you to still who you were, just sans the behavior.
Yeah.
But I can't, if I don't have the behavior, I can't be
Not the
this
same
person.
person.
Same thing I said about, like, I'm confident with the guy when I'm drunk, but then as soon as I'm sober, I'm still with the guy, but now I'm insecure, and because I can't handle the feelings.
Yeah. When I was drinking, I was the party starter. I was the one that's like, we're going out all night, and here's the plan. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. When I first got sober,
that sucks for everybody else.
Sure does. Didn't know that till way later. And then right when I got sober, all I was trying to do is maintain that pace of like, don't worry, I still got this. I'm still going to plan everything. It's totally fine. And then now I'm like 9:00 bedtime. Before that, crocheting and tea, but I was so afraid of losing that identity of who she was that no one else would then relate to. And then I realized, actually, they all were exhausted by me. And they're like, thank God. Not everyone, right? The handful that I had to say goodbye to. For the most part, they were like, yeah, you were hard. It was hard being with you when you were like that.
What's funny, though, about that also is interesting with the eating disorder stuff, that a lot of people that I do really well, I guess that's different, is I give people space to grieve it.
Yeah.
Because, like, people, like, that sucked. I worked really hard at being this person that felt very safe for me, and losing that identity, even though everybody's like, but, you're so healthy, and it's like, I can't explain to you why this is worse, but right now this is worse.
Right.
Like, please just let me be sad.
Yeah.
And I hold that space for people, that, again, that nuance of that, like, even when you're getting healthier, you're coming back into all the dynamics that you didn't want to be a part of anyways. And so that's hard. How do you say that to people, right? As you get healthier, for a while, it's about your recovery. And then at a certain point, you have to say, I don't like how I feel around you. I can't, how do you say that to somebody? Without my eating disorder, I can't handle
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
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 And so of learning how to also help people navigate that part tactfully.
Totally.
Well, and how do you get people to, I'm sure it's not always linear
No, that's
where
so,
you're,
no, not
where
never.
some people you can't necessarily have a conscious relationship or a conscious conversation with, right? Like some parents or partners or friends are just not going to meet you in that space, no matter how much you're trying to relate to them. And I have noticed, exactly to go back to what you said about, I think Gen X, Gen Zers, I always get this confused, millennials and then Gen Z, right? Are really divorcing themselves from parents at a pretty regular clip. Like, and it's on social media a lot. Like, it's okay not to have relationships with your parents and your family. You're born by choice, not, like just because you were born to them doesn't mean you have to be with them forever. I have seen a lot of that, to speak to what you're saying. And I think you have an interesting stance in that it's not that easy to just walk away and think that just because you don't talk to them anymore, you're past all of that, whatever it is that you're holding in your body.
Well, it's not natural. Like we're tribal creatures. It's not natural to separate from who you're from. So you have to be able to, again, create community. That's one of the hardest things about eating disorders, when people are like, why does nobody get better? And this is probably too heady, but it's like, you literally create a connection inside of you that takes the place of a parent. You can't take a kid away from their parent easily, and you can't convince the person who has the eating disorder that that's what this is. Like, I've created some kind of perverse situation that is objectifying myself, giving myself rules and boundaries that are unrealistic, because again, it's how I feel about what's happened in my dynamic, but like I'm internalizing that because I already feel separated from my parent. So what's really hard is a lot of parents also have this fantasy of, my kid's going to heal and they're going to really rebond with me. And that's not what's going to happen. It's like, I've always said that with people. I have had to continue to work through what I've been through. And just because I understand all of it, that's why I work with young people. I'm hoping they won't have the outcomes that I've had.
Right.
Relationship is really hard for me on an intimate level because of the experiences that I've had. But unless I'm working from a place who you can accept me at this stage of my life, which is very maternal, and I wasn't expecting that one either. And my tubes are out. Like, I didn't want my own kids. I wanted to live a very free life and very just like doing, kind of what I wanted. And it turns out what I want to do is be a part of all this other family stuff. So then I have to grieve that, where it turns out when I come into who I really am, holy shit, I really wanted a family. I really wanted this kind of, luckily I'm only 41. There's time.
Yeah.
But it's, again, like, those are those works in progress where you also have to keep admitting over and over that you got yourself wrong.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been nice, though, if some of our parents would have had this kind of self-reflection and would have been able to do this? So it's that kind of also walking that line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
It's very tricky.
Can you share a few women in your life that you really feel like have shaped you, guided you, whether it be someone you know personally or just like someone that you really admire?
Am I allowed to say me?
Of course you are. Yes, you are.
That's kind of like the joke where I'm like, which version of me was, like my greatest teacher? Honestly, one of the biggest influences, like women wise, I'd have to lump it into that. I have this like group of women in my life that mommed me, and they're friends, but they really taught me nurturing and maternal. They really stepped in and became like my mothers. And so it's like, there's that group of people where they taught me. Also, they stayed consistent enough when I was just ridiculously frantic over like, what are you going to want from me? If you love me, what am I responsible for? And of course, like, that has been great. They're still in my life. The women who have probably influenced my life the most, it's like, are the women who are probably not present right now, but they were all my best friends. Like, and they were like the women who were Never have I had more fun in my life, but I had the longest phone conversations with in my life. Like they were the people that held that space for me to explore and feel seen and held through these different iterations of self. And like, and I want to believe loved me enough to let me go when they knew that I was moving into something that it just didn't fit for either of us anymore. But that has been really precious is the word, I think, to me. And they've taught me the most. Like ironically, a lot of the people who are no longer in my life have taught me the most in the silence. And that was like this last year silence taught me a lot from people who I thought were forever people in my life. And I'm just like understanding through that probably more about who I was or am and that kind of thing. And then Britney Spears abs. I like Britney. But when I was a teenager, I would have said Britney Spears was responsible for like, my eating disorder, but she wasn't. Like the thing is the women who are the most influential in my life are kind of like these fallen media queens. It taught me the danger of thinking it's a good idea to put too much online. I always had that in the back of my head, but that's been such an important thing for me are the women who didn't make it. I remember when Amy Winehouse was big with rehab. A lot of women who, women just inspire me. Like there are certain people, it's like, because I'm also thinking in my head, I'm like, I can't tell these stories, but there were women from the rehabs and people in my own that I remember, and they're no longer alive. And I think about them and they taught me so much about the parts that you can't get ever too confident about. I learned the most from women I was in treatment with, whether as their practitioner or as a client with them, because they were so deep. I think people get that wrong. Like they were just so, again, it was such raw human emotion, but it inspired me. And I think like that's what keeps me as a creative inspired to keep going. Women just inspire me. I think women are fantastic. I'm like, I don't even know how I can like lump it into groups, but I wouldn't be able to pick like specific.
Love this.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of the podcast, right? Is because we see ourselves in each other constantly and we have something to learn from every single person, and sharing our stories, being in community is the only way to continue that. So
We're badasses.
Well,
all of them.
We're so brave.
Oh,
for sure.
Strong, brave, resilient.
And as I'm learn, like again, perimenopause and learning about hormones and how much, because I love teaching about that now. Like that's my new thing now where I'm just like, can I talk to you about your period? Can I talk to you about, did you not know this about your cycle?
Right.
Like let me tell you, because it's insane how much we all are our own chemists.
Yep.
And like
Right.
just trying to figure it all out with that's the thing. Like I can get in a conversation with a woman. There was this woman who works at a grocery store that I frequent. And, and I said to her one day something about my sobriety. And she was like, do you think I should like stop having wine tonight? I was like, how's it make you feel, girl? I was like, I don't know this person.
Yeah.
Whatever. 3 months later, she's like, hey, so I stopped drinking. Thanks for that conversation. And I'm just like, I get it. But I think about like, that's what women do.
Yep.
Women have this opportunity. One exchange with another woman can be so powerful to make you feel so inspired. And that's what I have to always also keep reminding and trying to direct my girls towards is to like make relationships with good women. Because in the same way that one interaction can really tear you down, another interaction can completely save and change your life. And for me, the ones that have been just like so expanding and hope inspiring, it's always a woman.
Yeah.
But it's a woman who has fucking survived some shit.
Totally.
And she stands like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great place to end.
Yeah, it is. We will make sure we tag The Body Keeps the Score as a book recommendation. I know we've both read it.
Tag Gabor Mate. Do The Body Says No.
The body
When
says
the body,
no.
when the body says no. That's
When
a
the
great
body
one.
says
Okay.
no.
Hold on to your kids is also great about attachment.
Hold on to your kids.
We will make sure we link all of those in the show notes. Also, of course, your website. So thank you for being on. You can find this on Patreon now. How exciting. YouTube, iHeart, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
If this speaks to you or anybody that you know that is struggling in this department or has kids that's struggling, share this episode with them. Rachel's just a phone call away.
Yep.
She's great. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Love you.
Thanks for coming on, Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, friends.